There is no guarantee. There is a page for you. Tyson knows those from the ring who will forever have their greatness preserved.
Johnson's up at 8. He's mad. Ketchell's excited, comes in wide open, takes the right square in the jaw. They're both down. Johnson gets up and the referee counts over Ketchell.
Dempsey batters the champion mercilessly with both hands. He has Willard in terrible shape.
Lewis moves in on Schmeling with the right, and Schmeling goes down. He bounces up immediately. Lewis on top of him. A left hand to the body, a right to the jaw, and Schmeling is down. Marciano on top of Moore. Moore backing away. Takes a right hand to the jaw, another right to the head, a left hook to the jaw by Marciano, and Moore is down. Clay pounds the left hand to the head, another left hook to the jaw by Clay. Liston backs towards the ropes. Clay misses a right hand over the head. Liston coming off the ropes with a left hand.
The current WBA and WBC World Heavyweight Champion in boxing is Mike Tyson. At 20 years of age, he is undefeated and a remarkable young man who is quite aware, as a result of his relationship with the late Cus D'Amato, of the history of boxing. From time to time, boxers come along that change their sport, and there have been different eras over the past century. What you're about to see is a unique look at the sport through Mike Tyson's eyes, almost a documentary. Here now, Mike Tyson looks back at 5 of the greatest heavyweights of all time.
I grew up in a very tough neighborhood, Brownsville, Brooklyn, and I never wanted to fight. I used to run away from fights, and eventually I had to learn how to fight because the bullies in the neighborhood would always pick on me. They would always take my sneakers. They would take my money, and I started fighting, and I started liking to get into a great deal of fights. I used to fight all the time in the streets, and then eventually I got into a great deal of trouble. When I first got involved with boxing, I was 12 years old, and I was in a reformatory upstate in Albany, New York. And at that particular time, I tried boxing, and this is something I decided I wanted to do and make a part of my life. When I was 14, I was introduced to a great legendary fight trainer by the name of Cus D'Amato. I spent at least 6 months with him when he decided to adopt me and become my legal guardian. And when we weren't in the gym, we used to watch a tremendous amount of fight films. And Cus used to point out the different reasons why these fighters were great and the reasons why they were better than the modern fighters.
The fact that these great fighters of the past, who we admire so much, and I tell them that there's no reason why he can't be even greater than those people. Because if his interest allows, and his will and ambition and his dedication is great, this is very possible.
I've won the heavyweight championship of the world, but still, I don't think I deserve to be mentioned in the same sentence with the legendary fighters of the past. Perhaps if I continue to beat the fighters of my day and conquer the imagination of the world, perhaps 10 years from now I could be mentioned as one of the all-time great fighters.
The heavyweight champion is a unique figure in the world of sports. Since John L. Sullivan and James J. Corbett met in the first heavyweight championship fight of the modern era, 42 men have claimed the crown, but only a handful can claim greatness. Last year, Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history. In his career to date, Mike has given evidence that he has the potential to someday take his place among the greatest heavyweights of all time. Obviously, Michael, you've accomplished an awful lot at a very early age. How much of your success has been due to the fact that you spent all of that time studying the great fighters of the past?
Well, I have to pay a great deal of respect and admiration to the fact that I watched these fighters and I learned a great deal about them, because I learned they started all at a very young age to become successful, and that gave me the courage and gave me the admiration to start at a young age and give me the determination to know that I could be successful at a young age also, even though I was just a baby starting out.
When you watch these films, did you try to copy anything specific from these champions?
Well, not really, Alex, because I was trying to be the best that Mike Tyson could be. You know, they had already, made themselves the yardstick of the fighters of the future, but I was just trying to be the best that I can be with what I had.
Well, any list of great heavyweights begins with the name Jack Johnson, whose spectacular career dominated boxing in the early 1900s. Johnson's style in and out of the ring marked him as one of the most controversial figures in the history of sports. Jack Johnson became the first black heavyweight champion in 1908. Don Dunphy narrates a look back at his life and times.
There was an era when President Teddy Roosevelt promised the American public a square deal, and Henry Ford's assembly line turned out the first Model Ts. There was a time when Carrie Nation and her women's temperance union members used their axes to destroy saloons in their battle against demon rum. And the ship that could never sink, the Titanic, sailed from Southampton Harbor and was lost at sea 5 days later with a loss of over 1,500 lives. Overseas, the war to end all wars, World War I, was beginning to erupt in Europe. And at home, the problem was not between nations, but between races, where despite the end of slavery, segregation was still the law of the land, and the world of sports was no exception. In the early 1900s, a young black man out of Galveston, Texas, named Jack Johnson, established himself as the leading heavyweight contender, and he refused to accept the unwritten rule that no black man would be allowed to fight for the heavyweight crown. Johnson pursued champion Tommy Burns across 3 continents, and in 1980 finally got his chance in Sydney, Australia. After 14 one-sided rounds, with Burns absorbing a terrible beating and Johnson's taunts, the police stepped in right here, stopped the cameras, and seconds later stopped the fight. Johnson's historic victory unleashed a wave of hatred against the new champion, who infuriated the public by humiliating his opponents and flaunting a lifestyle which offended the conventions of white society, including taking a succession of 3 white wives. A series of great white hopes failed to produce a serious challenger, and when Johnson destroyed former champion James J. Jeffries, the hatred boiled over into race riots across the country that resulted in many deaths. 2 years later, a trumped-up morals conviction caused Johnson to jump bail and flee the country, vowing never to return. After losing his title in 1915 to Jess Willard in Havana, he spent 5 more years in exile before finally turning himself into the authorities at the Mexican border. After his release, he continued boxing until the age of 50 and actually fought exhibitions when he was 67. He died a year later at the age of 68 in a car accident.
Mike, it seems sometimes that Jack Johnson's exploits out of the ring obscure the fact that at his best he was a superb athlete and considered by many the best defensive fighter in the sport.
Absolutely. I also was intrigued by his boxing style because at a particular time, fighters were throwing the 1 devastating or 2 punches at a time, and that's the period when Jack Johnson had the calm sense of anticipation and was catching the punches in the air, and it was just unbelievable watching it.
Well, let's take a look at that style and go back to July 4th, 1910, as James J. Jeffries, the former champion, came out of 6 years retirement to go up against the great Jack Johnson.
And here we are right here with Jack Johnson being very calm and cautious in the first round. He knows he had 45 rounds for this fight. He's about to tie Jeffries' hands behind his back as if he was a rag doll, and here he's doing so right here. Unbelievable power in Jack Johnson.
Johnson really was a safety-first fighter, Mike. He never took any unnecessary chances.
Absolutely, because in watching Jack Johnson fight, he reminds me of a cat playing games with a mouse. And as we're about to see right here, Jeffries tied, and the game is over.
And, of course, back then, no neutral corner rule, so Johnson could stand right over his man, waiting to pounce on him, as he is right here.
And by the time of the second knockdown, Jeffries was just totally exhausted here. Oh, man.
And coming up here, one of the most unusual incidents in heavyweight history, as the Jeffries corner and some of the media at ringside actually helped the former champion back on his feet, but they just delayed the inevitable.
And here we go right here, Johnson showing the mark of a great champion, finishing off his opponent.
That Jeffries win was really the highlight of Johnson's career. Let's move forward 5 years to Havana, Cuba. A 37-year-old Jack Johnson at the end of his career in round 21 of a scheduled 45-round bout against Jess Willard.
Yes, and Johnson at this point throwing combinations which are unheard of at this time, 1915. But I think this effort had just made Johnson totally exhausted. Here we are in round 26. Watch for the Willard right hand. Oh.
And watch for one more thing. Look at Jack Johnson's legs. Right there at the count of 4, they relaxed. And really that marked the end of the era of Jack Johnson. Mike, in the years after the Willard fight, Jack Johnson claimed that he threw the fight. What's your opinion?
Well, you know, it's very difficult for me to believe that, Alex, because it was a hot, scorching sun in Havana at that time, and Johnson had fought with all his heart and soul for 26 rounds, and I could believe he could have made it a great deal easier on both of them if he'd have went down in the first round and lasted 26 rounds.
Jack Dempsey was world heavyweight champion from 1919 to 1926, a unique era beginning with the return of American troops from World War I, which ended with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles by President Wilson and the other world powers in 1919. And America went on the post-war binge known as the Roaring Twenties, with flappers dancing the Charleston and Black Bottom, and gangsters such as Al Capone defying prohibition with rivers of bootleg whiskey. It was also an era known as the Golden Age of sports, with such legendary names as Babe Ruth in baseball, Red Grange, the Galloping Ghost, and Knute Rockne of Notre Dame in football, the great thoroughbred Man of War, Big Bill Tilden in tennis, and the immortal Bobby Jones in golf. But no athlete surpassed the public appeal of a hungry young kid named William Harrison Dempsey from a Colorado mining town, whose family traveled west in a covered wagon to seek their fortune. But young Jack discovered his fortune in his fists. He began fighting in Western saloons at age 15, and 9 years later he claimed boxing's biggest prize by destroying the man who had beaten Jack Johnson, the giant Jess Willard. Dempsey's two-fisted assault was relentless, and his dramatic victory elevated him to folk hero status. When he met the challenge of Georges Carpentier in 1921, the crowd of 90,000 paid an unheard of $1.7 million at the gate. 2 years later, 125,000 people stormed the gates of the Polo Grounds in New York City to see one of the most incredible rounds in boxing history, as Dempsey knocked down Louis Firpo, the wild bull of the Pampas, 7 times in the first round. Later in the round, the tables turned as Dempsey was knocked out of the ring. But he climbed back and stopped Firpo in the second round, tightening his stranglehold on the title and on the public. But the champion turned increasingly away from boxing. He married actress Estelle Taylor, which led him to try his hand at a Hollywood career. And he worked harder in this scene with Charlie Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks Sr. than defending his title. Finally, after 3 years without a fight, he met Gene Tunney before an incredible crowd of 135,000 fans in Philadelphia. But the champion's long layoff and the challenger's boxing skill resulted in a one-sided Tunney victory. Jack Dempsey had 2 more bouts, including his famous long count fight in his unsuccessful rematch with Tunney, and then retired from the ring. He opened a restaurant in New York City where he held court for a parade of the famous and colorful personalities of the day. Jack Dempsey died in 1983 at the age of 88.
Mike, they say that Jack Dempsey changed the face of the sport forever with a style that the public had never seen before. What was so unusual about Jack Dempsey?
Well, Jack Dempsey had the most unique distinction as being such a whirlwind, action-packed fighter, because of the fighters before his time, just a little bit before him, was very conservative fighters at that time. And Dempsey was just an action-packed fighter, a fighter that the people loved to see, and they weren't used to that type of fighting, and America fell in love with him.
That style really made its debut when Jack Dempsey fought the first time for the heavyweight championship of the world against Jess Willard.
Look at Willard on the right. Look at the size difference between the two. I think it was 45 pounds.
The Jess Willard at 6'6.5" was the tallest heavyweight champion in history.
But there, look at the combinations right here. This is what made Jack Dempsey such exciting and a great fighter. Just the ferociousness in him, waiting for his opponent to get up like a tiger.
They say that the phrase killer instinct was first used to describe Jack Dempsey, and you can see why from this round 1 against Willard.
Yes, Alex, and it's rounds like this that made the public love Dempsey so much, and this is why I love him so much.
Amazingly, Willard survived this savage beating into round 4, but couldn't answer the bell, and Jack Dempsey became the new champion. 2 years later, boxing's first $1 million gate at Boyle's 30 Acres in Jersey City, as the consummate boxer, the light heavyweight champion, Georges Carpentier, challenged Jack Dempsey for his title.
Well, in the early rounds, we see Carpentier giving a good account of himself here, beating Jack Dempsey to the punch, hurting him, boxing masterfully. And right here, Dempsey's about to come back and catch him with a right hand. All right, and here we go right here, and that took a lot out of Carpentier.
And so did the body punches of Dempsey as the fight wore on. Here's action in round 4.
Well, Alex, we could see it didn't matter if he fought a menacing giant like Willard or else an agile boxer like Carpentier. He just threw punches with bad intention.
And he continues to throw him there. The right hand dropped Carpentier. Watch here, there was still no neutral corner rule. So Dempsey is out of your picture on the left, waiting to pounce on Carpentier. Carpentier fakes like he's out and then jumps up ready to go, but that final body punch finished him. And Carpentier wasn't faking here. He really was gone.
And as you can see, Dempsey was just a savage puncher. Any punch he threw could take you out.
Another trademark of Jack Dempsey, helping up his fallen and beaten opponent.
And that's something that we call a bloodthirsty gentleman.
And now, perhaps the most famous round in boxing history. Round 7 of Dempsey's second fight against Gene Tunney, who had outpointed Jack and taken his title a year earlier. And at this stage, Tunney in the white trunks appeared totally in command.
Dempsey is very frustrated by the superior boxing skills of Gene Tunney, but now you see he's about to catch up and land a vicious combination that puts Tunney down for the knockdown.
And now the famous long count. Dempsey forgot the new neutral corner rule and stood over the fallen Tunney. The referee didn't start the count until Dempsey finally went to the farthest neutral corner. And Tunney got valuable seconds to recover himself. Here you see him with his wits about him, up at the count of 9 and back on his bicycle.
Even though he never was able to catch Tunney again, despite losing a 10-round decision, Jack Dempsey remained the most exciting and popular fighter of the era.
Mike, when you look back at the whole of Jack Dempsey's career, the thing that jumps out at you is he was always exciting. Do you feel a responsibility not just to win your fights, but also to entertain?
Absolutely. Any fighter in general would think their main objective is to make the audience go home and let them know they had witnessed something that was incredibly special. And every time the fighters fight, this person will be a lifelong fan. And this is what made Jack Dempsey a $1 million box office and a legendary fighter.
Of all the great victories in his career, Joe Louis always said that this victory over Max Schmeling was the sweetest. And then in 1941, the famous match against former light heavyweight champion Billy Conn, who had Joe Louis flustered with his boxing skills and hurt here in round 12 with his power. Seemingly, Billy Conn was in control of this fight. And in round 13, he came out to finish Joe Louis instead of trying to hold on for a decision. And that was his downfall.
As you can see, Billy Conn made a big mistake by trying to put pressure on and fighting Joe Louis. And in Joe Louis' prime, he made people pay for their mistakes, as we're about to see right here.
What we also see, Mike, is what you spoke about earlier. The pinpoint accuracy of Joe Louis. He just never seemed to waste a punch. And that right hand did away with the dream of Billy Conn. A decade later, in the final fight of his career, Joe Louis was knocked out by a young slugger named Rocky Marciano. It was the end of one era and the beginning of another.
Rocky Marciano wore the heavyweight crown from 1952 to 1956 and was the only champion to retire undefeated. It was a time when the United States Army was fighting its second war in a decade, this time in Korea. And a former general, Dwight D. Eisenhower, was elected president to lead the country through the war years and into a time of prosperity. The Red Scare was epitomized by the witch hunts of Senator Joseph McCarthy. Elizabeth II was crowned Queen of England, and an American actress named Grace Kelly married Prince Rainier of Monaco. Elvis Presley triggered a revolution in music called rock and roll, and the vaccine of Dr. Jonas Salk revolutionized the war on polio. In sports, the 4-minute mile barrier was finally broken by Roger Bannister on a cool afternoon in England. And the Yankee dynasty continued to dominate baseball as Billy Martin drove in the winning run in the 1953 World Series, their 5th straight. And in boxing, it was a frustrated high school baseball player from Brockton, Massachusetts, Rocky Marciano, who punched his way to the top of the heavyweight ranks. He had won 42 straight when he fought Jersey Joe Walcott for the title. Behind on points in the 13th round, Rocky was finally able to land the right hand he called Susie Q. Many people consider it the hardest single punch in boxing history. Of his 6 title defenses, only one went the distance, his first with Ezra Charles. And after 15 hard-fought rounds, Rocky captured a unanimous decision. Less than 2 years later, in 1956, Rocky shocked the boxing world by announcing his retirement because of back problems, managerial disputes, and pressure from his wife, Barbara. Despite huge offers, Rocky made his retirement stick, devoting his time to a series of business ventures. His only return to the ring came in 1969 when he staged a computer super fight with Muhammad Ali. He never saw the result because 3 weeks later, at age 45, Rocky Marciano was killed in a plane crash in Iowa.
Mike, Rocky Marciano was the most physically limited of all the heavyweight champions. He had the shortest arms. He only weighed in the mid-180s. Today, he'd be a cruiserweight. How was he able to overcome those physical disadvantages?
Well, as most people don't know, he turned those things that people thought was a disadvantage into an advantage. Being very short, he was able to get inside quicker with short arms and powerful punches. Plus, he had a tremendous heart and determination. And these things, what people don't know, don't show up on the statistics. So Rocky Marciano proved in his right. He was undefeated in 8 years. He was also a great fighter to reckon with.
Let's go back and take a look at the first time Rocky Marciano challenged for the heavyweight championship against Jersey Joe Walcott.
Marciano and Walcott here fighting like gladiators, neither one given an inch.
The year before, Jersey Joe had won the title at age 37, 17 years older than you were, Mike, when you became champion.
Now keep an eye on Jersey Joe's left. Pitch a perfect left hook on the chin of Rocky Marciano.
Mike, that was the first knockdown of Rocky's career, but he battled back until this point in round 13.
Here we see both of them about to throw right hands, but Rocky just beat him to the punch. And down goes Jersey Joe Walcott. And an extra left hook, and we have a new champion.
In 1954, Rocky made his 4th title defense against Ezra Charles, an outstanding boxer who had lost a close 15-round decision to Rocky 3 months earlier. Here in round 8, Rocky is in danger of losing his championship because his nose had been split wide open, and his corner had told him he needed a knockout in this round or the fight would be stopped.
And this is why Rocky was such a great fighter, because he came back from the brink of defeat to hurt Charles, drop him down for the first time in the fight. Ezra Charles is a former heavyweight champion, and he knows what it's like to be in there with the best of them, and he rises to meet the rampaging Rocky Marciano. And as we see here, Charles is trying to hold on to survive, but when Marciano wants to fight, he can't be stopped. This is a typical Marciano fight, overcoming all the obstacles, showing his tremendous will to win.
And a year later, against Archie Moore, what turned out to be the last fight of Rocky Marciano's career, as he retired unbeaten in 49 pro fights, the only undefeated heavyweight champion.
In another typical Marciano fight, just pounding his opponent on the ropes. He only knew one way to fight, and that's to come forward and throw murderous punches.
And Marciano really is just the opposite of Joe Louis, Mike. Louis would pick his shots when trying to finish his man. Marciano seems to try to throw as many punches as hard as he can, as long as he can.
And this is why Marciano was such a great champion. Non-stop punching for 15 rounds until the opponent went down, as Moore did here.
Mike, a lot of people compare you with Rocky Marciano because of your punching power and your aggression. How do you react to those comparisons?
Well, believe me, Alex, I'm flattered to be mentioned in the same breath with such a legendary fighter. But I really believe that I'm Mike Tyson and that was Rocky Marciano, and I'm doing the best that Mike Tyson could do. And really, I think it was a privilege to even be mentioned in the same sentence with Rocky. And I think we're just two different fighters. I met Cuss when I was 13 years old.
Lockdown rounds, drag out fights, endless days and sleepless nights. And one memory that still shines bright. You were there for me. You were there to keep me strong, to help me find where I belong. In my corner, right or wrong.
Muhammad Ali, the self-proclaimed greatest of all time, holds the unique distinction of being the only three-time heavyweight champion. Ali's era began in the turbulent 60s, a period of radical and sometimes violent change. From assassinations at home to the war in Vietnam, draft cards burned in the name of peace and bras burned in the name of women's liberation. Riots in the ghettos and confrontations on the campuses. The 60s challenged conventional values, and in sports, no one represented that challenge more than brash young Cassius Marcellus Clay.
My New Year's revolution is to knock out that big ugly bear, shake up the whole world in 1964, and talk no more.
He did whoop Sonny Liston, the man he called the Big Ugly Bear, and won the heavyweight title in only his 20th pro fight. Now known as Muhammad Ali, he stopped Liston in round one of the rematch. The most prominent athlete in the world, Ali gave it all up by refusing induction in the U.S. Army, claiming exemption as a black Muslim minister. Stripped of his title, he spent 3.5 years in exile. Ali reclaimed the crown by upsetting George Foreman in 1974. He then capped his career in his rematch against Leon Spinks that won him a third world title, 14 years after he won his first one. In his final win, Ali showed for the last time the flair for showmanship that made him unique in heavyweight history.
Mike, when you used to sit with Cus D'Amato and look at the films of Muhammad Ali's career, what did Cus tell you made Ali so special?
Well, Cus always told me that Ali has the most heart and most confidence in any fighter that he ever saw in his years as being a teacher. And as I sit down and watch films of Ali, I believe Cus, and he was right.
Well, let's pick up the career of Muhammad Ali when his name was still Cassius Clay as he challenged Sonny Liston for the heavyweight championship of the world.
The world has never seen speed like this from a man the size of Muhammad Ali. And as you see here, he has a tremendously fast jab, fast leg movement, completely keeping out of the way of Sonny Liston. And it's like no contest here.
It really is no contest. It's hard to imagine that Clay was a 7-1 underdog. Liston was considered unbeatable. And it took Clay's speed and his guts, really, to expose Liston and defeat him.
Look at Clay leaning straight back from punches. He would get away with things that many considered mistakes because of the tremendous speed he possessed.
When Liston didn't come out for round 7, Clay put on a display of the showmanship that was as much a part of the man as the speed of hand and foot that had won him the title. Mike, do you agree with the experts that say that this 1966 title defense against Cleveland Williams was Ali at his very best?
Yes, I do, Alex. Because right here, we're going to watch. Look at the shuffle. Clean punches, fast, accurate, unbelievable. He even has good leverage on the punches, with which they have tremendous power behind him. And here we see here Ali. This is a different Ali. This is not the dancing master. This is the flat-footed Ali punching for power. He knows he has his man hurt, and he's looking to finish him.
And then, in 1971, that sensational first fight between Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali. In this fight, Ali really proved, Mike, that he had that one quality which all of these great champions have, and that's a tremendous fighting heart.
Yes, and we're going to see Frazier connect with a tremendous left hook, and then again, another left hook that leaves Ali semi-helpless. But Ali, with the tremendous heart and determination he has, he tries to hold on and clear his head. And we can see Joe's like, he's relentless. He's just all over him, going for the kill. Unbelievable non-stop punching by Joe Frazier.
On this particular night, Joe Frazier just would not be denied.
And in a few seconds, we're going to watch Joe encore with a left hook that put Ali down. And here, Ali's showing the heart of a champion, getting up to finish the fight.
He did finish on his feet, lost a unanimous decision to Joe Frazier. Ali won his second meeting with Frazier by unanimous decision, and then here in 1975, the famous Thriller in Manila. Mike, what was the difference? Why did Ali win this fight with Frazier?
Well, they were both equal in will, but just Ali at this point of their career had more skill, and I think the skill edged out in this fight, in which he's connecting with sharp, crisp punches, and he's hurting Joe. But Joe, with the will of a champion, continues to come back, even though he's hurt.
And finally, at the end of round 14, Frazier's corner refuses to allow Joe to continue.
You know, Alex, Ali had a lot of great moments in his career, but I honestly believe this was his greatest.
Michael, we've just taken a look at 5 of the greatest champions in the history of the heavyweight division. In your opinion, is it possible to compare champions from different eras?
Absolutely, it's impossible. There's no way. Times have changed, techniques have changed, strategies have changed, and it's just totally impossible. It can't be done.
You obviously have a strong awareness of boxing history. How do you see your role in the future history of the heavyweight division?
Well, I won the title, and I'm just looking forward to fighting everybody to prove that I'm the champion and clean up my division.
In your opinion, who was the greatest of the 5 fighters we just seen?
Well, it's very easy for me to choose. With 12 years as champion, 25 title defenses, Joe Louis stands alone.
Well, tonight you take another step in your drive to establish your own greatness. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Time.
I grew up in a very tough neighborhood, Brownsville, Brooklyn, and I never wanted to fight. I used to run away from fights, and eventually I had to learn how to fight because the bullies in the neighborhood would always pick on me. They would always take my sneakers. They would take my money, and I started fighting, and I started liking to get into a great deal of fights. I used to fight all the time in the streets, and then eventually I got into a great deal of trouble. When I first got involved with boxing, I was 12 years old, and I was in a reformatory upstate in Albany, New York. And at that particular time, I tried boxing, and this is something I decided I wanted to do and make a part of my life. When I was 14, I was introduced to a great legendary fight trainer by the name of Custamato. I spent at least 6 months with him when he decided to adopt me and become my legal guardian. And when we weren't in the gym, we used to watch a tremendous amount of fight films. And Cus used to point out the different reasons why these fighters were great and the reasons why they're better than the modern fighters.
The fact that these great fighters of the past, who we admire so much, and I tell them that there's no reason why he can't be even greater than those people.
Obviously, Michael, you've accomplished an awful lot at a very early age. How much of your success has been due to the fact that you spent all of that time studying the great fighters of the past?
Well, I have to pay a great deal of respect and admiration to the fact that I watched these fighters and I learned a great deal about them because I learned they started all at a very young age to become successful, and that gave me the courage and gave me the admiration to start at a young age and give me the determination to know that I could be successful at a young age also, even though I was just a baby starting out.
When you watch these films, did you try to copy anything specific from these champions?
Well, not really, Alex, because I was trying to be the best that Mike Tyson could be. You know, they had already, made themselves the yardstick of the fighters of the future, but I was just trying to be the best that I can be with what I had.
Well, any list of great heavyweights begins with the name Jack Johnson, whose spectacular career dominated boxing in the early 1900s. Johnson's style in and out of the ring marked him as one of the most controversial figures in the history of sports. Jack Johnson became the first black heavyweight champion.
There is no guarantee. There is a page for you. Tyson knows those from the ring who will forever have their greatness preserved.
Johnson's up at 8. He's mad. Ketchell's excited, comes in wide open, takes the right square in the jaw. They're both down. Johnson gets up and the referee counts over Ketchell.
Dempsey batters the champion mercilessly with both hands. He has withered in terrible shape.
Lewis moves in on Schmeling with the right, and Schmeling goes down. He bounces up immediately. Lewis on top of him. A left hand to the body, a right to the jaw, and Schmeling is down. Marciano on top of Moore. Moore backing away. Takes a right hand to the jaw, another right to the head, a left kick to the jaw by Marciano, and Moore is down. Cassius Clay pounds the left hand to the head. Another left hook to the jaw by Clay. Liston backs towards the ropes. Clay misses a right hand over the head. Liston coming off the ropes with a left hand.
The current WBA and WBC World Heavyweight Champion in boxing is Mike Tyson. At 20 years of age, he is undefeated and a remarkable young man who is quite aware, as a result of his relationship with the late Cus D'Amato, of the history of boxing. From time to time, boxers come along that change their sport, and there have been different eras over the past century. What you're about to see is a unique look at the sport through Mike Tyson's eyes, almost a documentary. Here now, Mike Tyson looks back at 5 of the greatest heavyweights of all time.
Because if his interest allows, and his will and ambition and his dedication is great, this is very possible.
I won the heavyweight championship of the world, but still, I don't think I deserve to be mentioned in the same sentence with the legendary fighters of the past. Perhaps if I continue to beat the fighters of my day and conquer the imagination of the world, perhaps 10 years from now I could be mentioned as one of the all-time great fighters.
The heavyweight champion is a unique figure in the world of sports. Since John L. Sullivan and James J. Corbett met in the first heavyweight championship fight of the modern era, 42 men have claimed the crown, but only a handful can claim greatness. Last year, Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history. In his career to date, Mike has given evidence that he has the potential to someday take his place among the greatest heavyweights of all time.